There used to be a time when I loved going on late night drives, but not anymore. I went to stay with my grandma when this incident happened. My grandma lived in the countryside, hence, after dark, life was pretty boring there. The nearest bar, or rather a small wooden shack, was an hour's distance. The neighborhood people were also old and solitary, so I was mostly on my own. So whenever I felt bored, I borrowed my grandpa's red Mustang and went for a drive after dinner. The joy of driving on the high road with no one else around relaxed me each time, until I met a weird stranger. It was a warm Friday night. I picked up some beers from the small gas station and started on my late night strolling. I rolled the windows down and cool air brushed my face. Unlike the city, I had the full opportunity to drink and drive there, but I never sped too fast and always abided by the traffic lights. I was driving on the empty road enjoying my beer when I stopped at a red light. The empty highway stood before me. I looked around and realized how deserted the place was. I turned on the radio, hoping to find some music when suddenly my eyes went to the sidewalk. At some distance on my left stood a bushy tree. Under that tree, I could see a human figure standing and watching me. The shadow of the tree made the sight quite illuminating. I couldn't see the person clearly, but sure could feel his eyes on me. Feeling a bit weird by the silent watcher, I honked my horn just to make him realize I could see him too. I expected him to walk away, hearing the car horn, but instead, he surfaced from the darkness. He came out and stood right underneath the streetlights. It was a man, probably in his late 50s. He was dressed in a very weird way. There was a blue afro wig on his head. He wore a red tie with no shirt on, and a pair of shorts printed in the form of the American flag. He wore brown, murky boots. His excessive leg and body hair made him look grisly and gross. As if all this weirdness wasn't enough, he painted his entire face white, with red paint circling his eyes, and he drew a distorted red smile on his lips. It seemed like he was going into a crazy parade on the 4th of July. He suddenly smiled at me, widening his creepy green eyes, and I felt my stomach drop. His teeth had blood stains on them. I froze at that moment for a second, and then saw the signal turn green. I had to move, and this man was still standing there, waiting for me to pass him by. Feeling freaked out by this creepy-ass behavior, I rolled up my window and started driving past him. The tension of the situation got into me so badly that when I was almost parallel to him, I let go of the clutch and the engine stopped. Yeah, my car stopped while he stood right next to me. I wanted to turn the engine on, but I don't know why. I became numb sitting inside the car. It felt like the man had cast a spell on my car to make it stop right next to him. I kept staring at him when he stooped down and planted his face on my glass window. His eyes were evil. His smile looked even more distorted. In a creepy, squeaky voice, he said, "Long live America! But you don't seem to be from this country." Now, I'm half European and half Asian. Inheriting from my dad, I look more Asian than European. So practically, his racist words hurt me. But I was so struck with fear that I couldn't say a word about this guy. My breathing got heavy. He smiled once again, and then licked the glass in a very vile manner. Suddenly, I got my courage back, realizing he couldn't get inside the car because I already locked the doors. So I screamed back for the first time, saying, "Get away from my car, you freak!" Hearing my protest, the smile on his face got replaced by a vengeful anger. He opened his mouth wide and screamed at me like a fucking psycho. What the hell is your problem? I'll tell you that, Mr. Who Don't Belong Here. My tolerance limit finally gave up, and I started the engine to drive away as fast as possible. My engine started, and the man backed off a bit from the car. Suddenly, a cruel idea came to mind. I was really angry at the moment, and without thinking, I rolled down the window just a little bit so I could throw an empty beer bottle at the jerk. It all happened so quickly, but the man couldn't guess what was about to come at him. The beer bottle hit his face and shattered into pieces. I didn't wait for a second and stormed out full speed. I only heard a painful scream, and from my rearview mirror, saw the man crouch down on the floor, hiding his bloody face into his palms. I can't explain how I reached home that night, but I was so terrified by this experience that for the next 3 days, I barely came out of the house. When my grandma noticed my odd behavior, she asked what was wrong. I didn't tell her and tried to shrug off the incident. On the 4th day, I was sleeping in my room when I heard voices downstairs. Out of curiosity, I came out and saw my grandma talking to a police officer. I slowly came down the stairs when the police officer looked up, hearing my footsteps. The moment I saw his face, a cold shiver ran down my spine. He had green eyes, like I had seen before. The weirdest things were the cut on his face, which looked very fresh. He kept staring at me without blinking, and then said to my grandma, "This must be your grandson." "Yes, he came to stay with me for a while." "I see. Well, America welcomes everyone." "Excuse me?" "Just saying. This country has a place for all. Long live America. I'll see you around then." He left just like he came. My grandma stood in the doorway with a confused face. I asked her how she knew the man, to which she replied she had never seen him in the neighborhood. I felt something was very wrong, so I immediately went to the nearest police station and reported about this guy. I took my grandma with me. The cops assured me that they had no cops matching the features, and they would look into the matter. When we came back home, we found the entire house vandalized. Someone broke in and ruptured the entire house. The couch was stabbed several times, making the cotton underneath come out. The dishes were broken. Our entire kitchen was filled with broken glass. On my grandma's bed, someone had left a headless squirrel. The blood of the poor dead animal made the white bedsheet completely red. And in my room, someone wrote on the big white wall with blood. It read, "You don't belong here, and I'll be back." The cops came and investigated our entire house. We had to stay in a motel for 3 days until the cops arrested the crazy guy. He was found living in the woods. Checking his background, the cops discovered that this man used to be an army general long back, and then he got suspended for his racial behavior with civilians. He was sent to a mental institution from which he escaped a few months back. He even injured a patrolling officer on the highway and then stripped him naked to steal his clothes. The cops found the officer tied inside an abandoned wooden cabin where the psycho took shelter after escaping from the mental institution. I'm so glad this man will be behind bars for the rest of his life. I also feel fortunate for saving myself and my grandma from this devil's grasp.